Chapter 11:1. 5. Dark blue plus dots. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. In the unoccupied room of Zhongqing High School, Bai Ye raised his head and looked at the bright moonlight coming in from the window. Only then did he realize that he had stayed in the classroom for so long, appreciating the 5 more rays of true energy coming out of his dantian. Bai Ye realized that he had been practicing for about 10 hours. I was so absorbed in practicing that I even forgot to exercise. I should set an alarm next time. Standing up from the ground and stretching twice, the skin of the body has been completely restored during this period, and it is time to proceed to the next stage of bathing. Bai unscrewed the door and walked out, walking towards home under the light of the street lights, preparing to make up for all the exercises he missed during the day. But while passing by the street, a huge explosion came from the bank next door, and the huge roar could be heard for miles around. What's the situation? There was a sudden loud noise in the middle of the night. Bai Ye was startled and subconsciously took a step back. Then he realized something. After hesitating for a while, he walked towards the bank. At this moment, Tiley Bank was already off work, and an irregular hole half a person's height was being opened on the outer wall of the bank's vault. A robber dressed like Batman with a rifle in his hand and a mask on his head was guarding the entrance of the bank that exploded. The other 3 hooded robbers filed in through the hole opened by the explosives. Before the police came, they looted the cash and jewelry in the vault in a well-trained manner. It looked like they had rehearsed many times. This is really a bank robbery. Should we call it a free America? But the location was poorly chosen. There are hundreds of banks scattered throughout New York, but I chose this one in the city center to rob. It's so close to the police station. Even at night, the police can arrive within 10 minutes. The deck is used by the car, but why is there only one person guarding it outside? There wasn't even a single person in the car, and the robbery team was too rudimentary. At this moment, Bai, who was more than 10 meters away from the bank, observed the scene of working people inside the bank working enthusiastically and seriously, and analyzed in his heart. However, although in his opinion, the robber already belonged to a fledgling amateur team and the risk of being caught afterwards was extremely high, this order should be successful. After checking that there was no surveillance nearby, he was ready to take action. Of course, this is not the so-called execution of justice. It just happens that my hands are a little tight recently, so I am ready to take advantage of others. Looking at the robber team with only one person guarding the entrance of the cave, Bai Ye hesitated and called up the attribute panel. Name, Bai Ye, lifespan, 18/120. Strength, 1.4 plus, constitution, 1.3 plus, spirit, 1.4 plus, charisma, 1.4 plus. Attribute points to be used, 0.5. Looking at the attribute points to be used on the attribute panel these days, he has been thinking about adding 0.1 to try the effect. After all, who has never tried it before knows what will happen when adding points. This time I happened to encounter such a thing and just tried the effect. Bai Ye hid behind the wall. After hesitating for a moment, he raised his hand and tapped the plus sign in the strength column. The next moment, the value on the attribute panel changed. Name, Bai Ye, lifespan, 18/120. Strength, 1.4 plus 0.1. Constitution, 1.3 plus, spirit, 1.4 plus, charisma, 1.4 plus. Attribute points to be used, 0.4. Description column, you equip 0.1 attribute points in strength, and the actual strength is 1.4. You equip an additional 0.1 strength point, and the expressed strength is 1.5. What's the meaning? Is this 0.1 increase not included in the strength I exercised? Considered additional equipment? Bai Ye thought doubtfully as he looked at the movement on the description column. But the next moment, the cool breath began to flow into his limbs and bones, and began to transform his body. The joints all over his body began to make slight clicking sounds, and the strengthening brought by adding more points allowed him to clearly feel the improvement in his strength. In just one breath, he felt that his strength had increased by about 50%. There was no pain or discomfort, only a sense of confidence brought about by the increase in strength. He was sure that the strength and speed he displayed at this moment had exceeded the upper limit of human beings. He gently clenched his fist and felt the flesh and bones on his arm rattling under the huge force, causing slight pain. He knew that this was his body telling him that his physique could no longer keep up with the increase in strength. Wouldn't the increase in strength attribute also increase the physique? Bai Ye sighed regretfully. I originally thought that as the strength increases, the physique will also improve a little to ensure the balance of the body. It seems that this loophole cannot be exploited. At the same time, this practice has also proved that the process of adding points has no side effects, and it only takes a moment, and it can really be used as a fairy bean. After adding points, Bai Ye counted the time and had to end the battle within 8 minutes, otherwise he might run into the police. Feeling that he had plenty of time, Bai Ye took off his clothes and wrapped his right hand around it to prevent fingerprints. At the same time, he took off his inner shirt and covered his face below his eyes. He then leaned over slightly and walked around to the side door of the bank. He used his legs to make a slight jump and held the exposed edge of the second floor with his right hand, like a spiritual ape. Normally, you can easily jump up to the second floor. He gently stepped on his feet, and under the control brought by the 1.4 spirit, his footsteps silently came to the top of the exploded pothole, quietly dormant, waiting for the opportunity. At this moment, in the bank vault, the 3 robbers were constantly moving the US dollars, foreign currencies, gold, securities, banknotes, and jewelry stored in the vault. As for the looted property, they put it directly into sacks, and then threw them to their accomplices outside through the blown holes, so that he could load them directly into the car. Repeat this, collecting as much property as possible within 5 minutes, and then drive away regardless of how much is left. Bai Ye squatted on the second floor, gently pressing his right hand on the eaves, looking down at the robber who was guarding the door with his rifle in his left hand, and walking towards the car with the cash thrown by his accomplice in his right hand. He complained again in his heart that this was really unprofessional. Taking advantage of the other party's unpreparedness, Bai Ye flipped over slightly, jumped directly from the second floor to the back of the robber, and punched him in the heart. The other party didn't even hum, and instantly falling into a baby's sleep, he gently held the robber's body, dragged him to the side, and then skillfully took off all the equipment and put it on. The whole process did not take more than 40 seconds. The items obtained include hood *1, black gloves *1, rifle *1, coat *1, and pants *1. As for the body armor worn by the robbers, Bai Ye thought it was a waste of time to wear it, so he skipped it. After putting on his clothes and hood, he immediately stood silently at the entrance of the cave, where another bag of belongings was thrown out. He bent down to pick it up silently, then dragged the money and threw it on the trunk of the vehicle parked at the door like before. Then he walked into the hole again and waited for the next bag of money to be thrown out. Chapter 12, Being Treated as a Supervillain. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Louda, this time I got it. Inside the vault, a robber excitedly hugged a bag of cash and said excitedly, "Stop talking nonsense. The time is up. Let's get out quickly. If it's too late, the police will be here." The leader of the robbers urged, and then he held the last bag of cash and prepared to bend down and go out of the hole, but as soon as he reached the door, a man wearing a fur coat and a black hood was squatting down with a loaded rifle, pointing the gun at them. "Fourth brother, what are you doing? Get out of the way for us," one of the robbers asked, but the face of the leading robber behind the mask changed. He realized that something was wrong and wanted to take out his gun, but the rifle was removed from his face. The bullet spit out instantly pierced his wrist. Bang bang bang, the next moment, tongues of fire spurted out from the muzzle of the rifle. Before any of them could react, a few bullets accurately pierced their ankles, and blood flowed from the wounds. A few people never expected that there was a Lao Lu guarding the door, and they fell down wailing one by one. After Bai Ye confirmed that these people had injured their legs and could not run far, he immediately got up and got into the vehicle prepared by these people to escape, and drove away directly. 10 minutes later, Bai Ye parked this old-fashioned sedan in an uninhabited suburb. He took out the sack containing money from the car and Bai Ye counted it. "I got about 400,000 US dollars, 7 gold bars of different weights, some jewelry and bills. If I sold them all, I would probably have more than 1 million in cash." Looking at the assets in front of him, Bai Ye couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The next step was the money laundering work, but he didn't panic about this. After all, he had channels. Bai Ye paused for a moment, because in his ears, he heard the sound of a cane tapping on the ground from behind. Full of vigilance, he turned around and saw a white man walking towards him, holding a cane in his hand, wearing a red hood that covered the area above his nose, and wearing a tight leather jacket. White Knight. He really didn't know what to say this time. It didn't matter if he robbed a bank when he went out. It was a rare occasion to rob the rich and give to the poor. Why did he meet Daredevil in the wilderness? Why did he carry it out like this tonight? Hey, kid, you took something that doesn't belong to you. The man said with an inexplicable smile on his face. Daredevil? You and the Kingpin are in love and fighting each other. Why do you have the time to come here at such a remote place at night? Bai Ye said, stepping back step by step, back to the front door of the car, leaning on the open window with his left hand, a harmless smile on his face. Have you heard of me? Then you should know what I will do to you. If you cooperate and surrender, you won't have to suffer. Daredevil approached step by step with his baton, with a very relaxed expression on his face. After all, he was just dealing with a little thief, and it was just a dessert after a meal, but when he came within 3 meters of Bai Ye, Daredevil's face changed color slightly, because with 2 clicks, the man in front of him was turning the button of the car's speaker at an extremely fast speed. Judging from the sound that echoed when he took action, it was 2 minutes faster than him. Immediately, a popular song of the year that was being played on the radio resounded on the empty highway. And as the music rang, Bai Ye kicked his right leg into the air. A kick that exceeded the limits of the body instantly pierced the air, causing a sharp sound of breaking wind, and kicked out towards Daredevil's chest. But the sound was captured by Daredevil first, and Bai Ye's attack distance was immediately discerned amidst the chaotic roar of music, because Bai Ye's attack came too fast and both sides reached the limit of human body in terms of strength and speed. The gap in physical strength was not big, coupled with the interference of noise. When Daredevil reacted, he had no way to avoid it. He could only lean back, move his center of gravity downwards and pull away a little, and use the gap to lift the baton to block his chest. Boom! A sound like a stone hitting metal came from the iron bar. After Daredevil was directly kicked by this kick, his legs rubbed against the ground for a distance of 4 to 5 meters before he barely stopped his sliding body. Bai Ye used this reaction force to flip in the air and return to the car. Without hesitation, he reached out to take out the rifle from the window and gave Daredevil 2 shuttles, but as soon as his arm was stretched out, it was tightly wrapped by a silver wire. What entangled Bai Ye was the hook lock that popped out from the front end of the multifunctional baton in Daredevil's hand. At this moment, Daredevil has put away his previous casual attitude and has a serious expression on his face. From the previous confrontation, it told him that although the guy in front of him sounded young, his strength should not be underestimated and he would be a super criminal in the future, but fortunately, he had already figured out Bai Ye's true nature from the previous fight. Although he was a little clever, he had no fighting skills at all, and he didn't have the heart to be cruel to others. Although he was superior to him in terms of strength and speed, he was strangely weak in terms of physical defense. Judging from the sound of the kick on his stick just now, the opponent's right foot should have been broken at the moment. Oh! Bai Ye sighed helplessly as his right hand was controlled. He immediately gave up his plan to take the gun, grabbed the hook lock with his backhand, and then rushed towards Daredevil. Unlucky, 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 damn, let's just kill him in one move. Bai Ye thought to himself as he ran. Daredevil also looked serious as he listened to Bai Ye's charging momentum, ready to resolve the battle in one move. Click. Click. Click, what's going on? Daredevil suddenly had a trace of doubt in his expression. A series of tiny clicking sounds were heard from Bai Ye, who was rushing in front of him. Part of this, Daredevil knew, was the overwhelming wail caused by the huge force of the bones in his legs when the opponent was running, but Daredevil didn't know the other part of the clicking sound. It was the sound of the body healing and destroying when Bai Ye added some strength. Yes, in the process of running, Bai Ye increased his strength a little more, reaching 1.6. Wait, there's something wrong with this speed. Daredevil was shocked, but by the time he realized it was coming, it was already too late, because Bai Ye's figure was already approaching him like a ghost. Kong! Bai Ye's left foot suddenly stepped on the asphalt road like an old tree taking root. The huge force penetrated the ground and left a half-inch deep footprint directly on the hard road. The other leg he raised was like a cannonball, hitting Daredevil's defenseless chest, which was unable to escape. With the obvious sound of bones shattering, Daredevil flew straight out, spinning in the air and flying backwards for a distance of 8 or 9 meters. He spurted out a mouthful of blood and lay on the ground unable to get up again. Chapter 15. When will everyone get together offline? You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Late at night, in a certain apocalyptic world, a young man in his 20s was looking forward uneasily. In his eyes, he can see a virtual panel that only he can see in this world. At the top of the panel, there is a line of big words, All Heavens Exchange Group. This young man is the omniscient and omnipotent immortal who blocked Bai Ye in the administrator group. Just now, he received a message after gaining administrator privileges. The number of level 1 members in the communication group has reached 3, and they have reached the qualifications for promotion. Do you want to upgrade the chat group and expand the number of people to 20? The young man who received the news was delighted. The level in the group is linked to the strength of the members, and reaching level 1 in strength means that the destructive power or at least some aspect of physical fitness has exceeded the limits of the human body. Before this, the only people in the entire communication group who had reached level 1 were the young man and the gentleman Zhutian. The world the others lived in was basically ordinary. He was really curious about who had reached level 1. Opening the chat group members and looking at a row of lists, the young man's face darkened in the next second, because on the dark blue list, a big number 1 was displayed in front. How could it be him? How could it be him? The young man murmured to himself, really unable to accept it. Wasn't he banned by me? How could he reach level 1 so quickly? Could it be that the world he traveled through was some kind of advanced world? Suddenly, the young man thought of something and immediately started to look through the file directory. Then he saw that the number of downloads of the file, Zhutian Divine Art, increased from 5 to 6. His eyes immediately narrowed and he said to himself, no wonder. It seems that this fellow is a martial arts wizard. It seems that we need to think of other methods. We must get rid of this unstable factor as soon as possible. The young man muttered to himself, glanced at the upgrade column of the chat group and chose to give up the upgrade, deciding to wait until Deep Blue was eliminated before considering it. Before waving his hand to hide the communication group from his eyes, in the peripheral vision of the young man, he introduced the level of the group chat in front of his omniscient and omnipotent immortal. After walking all the way and rejecting 5 or 6 men and women who came forward to seek mate, Bai Ye finally arrived at the classroom before class. As the classroom bell rang, Bai Ye saw teacher James from the biology class walking in from outside the classroom. He glanced at the whole class and said, before class, I would like to remind you that the quota for tomorrow's Osborne visit is very precious. I hope you take it seriously and don't leave anyone out. When the word absent was mentioned, James specifically glanced at Bai Ye in the back row. Seeing that Bai Ye looked absent-minded throughout the whole process, he sighed helplessly, ended the topic and continued the class. At this moment, Bai Ye was lying on the table, with a school bag on his back. His butt looked like he was sitting on a chair, but in fact there was still a gap of 2 to 3 millimeters from the chair. His legs were firmly planted in a horse stance, and in his abdomen, there was an overwhelming pain at the moment. After a period of precipitation, the dilute sulfuric acid was playing its role in his intestines and stomach, corroding the intestines and stomach. Even if he reaches a constitution of 1.4, he is still not beyond the limits of the human body. Even if it is diluted sulfuric acid, his fragile internal organs cannot resist it at all. Feeling the pain of heartbreak, Bai Ye's lips are a little white because of the pain. In order to relieve the pain, he distractedly listened to the teacher's lecture on the podium, and opened the chat group to see what the group members were talking about, but then he discovered that a new member named Crimson Eye had joined the chat group. After taking a look at the introduction called Crimson Eye, Bai Ye discovered that this was actually a guy whose group level had reached level 4. Through these days of snooping on the screen and watching group files, he also understood that level represents strength. It can be said that this is the strongest guy without any doubt except for the omniscient and omnipotent great immortal, who can't see the level, but at this moment in the chat group, this guy named Crimson Eyes didn't put on any airs at all. Instead, He communicated with every member of the group in a friendly manner. Both his tone and attitude made people feel very comfortable. But looking at it, Bai Ye felt something was wrong, because he found that this guy was very instructive when chatting. All the questions asked were how to come to their respective worlds, as well as overt and covert reminders, and let everyone gather together to verify the differences in the worlds. Crimson Eyes, I just asked the omniscient and omnipotent immortal. He said that as long as members agree, they can come to each other's world. Everyone in the group seems to be very friendly, so why don't we meet offline? Group member, Crimson Eye, sent a cross-border application to the group members. Looking at the application sent by Crimson Eye, Bai Ye checked it. Even those who were banned could go to that world if they accepted the invitation. Faced with the request of such a powerful person, most people chose to accept the invitation, leaving only the omniscient and omnipotent immortal and Bai Ye who did not click to agree. This can't be phishing. Bai Ye's face was full of suspicion. The behavior of this Crimson Lord was so strange that he couldn't help but doubt it. Regardless of whether he was phishing or not, Bai Ye refused the invitation without hesitation. After he refused, in a certain apocalyptic world, the young man's face froze slightly, and then returned to normal. Looking at the surrounding group members curiously observing the environment, the young man knew that his plan had failed again. In the school, Bai Ye stayed quietly all day. In the evening, as usual, after saying hello to Peter, he ran to the gym. After arriving at the gym, Coach Smith had been waiting here for quite some time. When he saw Bai Ye coming over and waving, he said, "You didn't come all day yesterday. Did something happen?" "It's nothing, it's just a little delay." Bai Ye didn't want to say more. Did he want to tell Smith that he couldn't rob the bank yesterday? Bai Ye, who had been wasting the whole day, was already impatient and said, "Let's start quickly. Let's start by lifting the barbell. First, increase the weight of the barbell to 200 kilograms. 0.200 pounds. Smith's face froze and he looked at the young man in front of him who was suspected of being a mutant. It had only been a day and he had already improved so much. Didn't he have no upper limit? But he didn't say anything. After seeing Bai Ye's difficulty, he didn't say a word. The topic they usually discuss is how to better exercise the muscles of the body. Smith won't say a word about things like mutants and supermen, and Bai Ye was satisfied with his attitude, and no longer suppressed his uniqueness, and became more and more unscrupulous in his behavior in the private gym. When he first started practicing the Zhutian magic technique, he still carried Smith on his back, but after seeing how successful he was, he no longer tried to hide it, and began to transfer his internal energy to practice the Zhutian magic technique in front of him. Chapter 16 Smith's Book Writing Plan. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. You performed a total of 312 weighted squats. Repeat 21 times to increase the upper limit of strength by 0.1. Repeat 5 times to increase the upper limit of physical fitness by 0.1. Repeat 19 times to increase the mental limit by 0.1. At 10 o'clock in the evening, Bai Ye wiped the sweat from his forehead, put down the more than 300 kilograms of weight on the side, and looked at the content displayed on the instruction column. With the extra 0.2 increase in strength, the efficiency of training is indeed several times faster than before. After just 4 or 5 hours of training at night, it is almost to the point of upgrading. That's it for today. Bai Ye stood up straight and turned to Smith. The expression on Smith's face was already numb from surprise. After hearing Bai Ye's words, he asked, "Aren't you going to practice? Just practice for 5 hours today? It's okay. You guys are about to get off work. I'll go back and continue training by myself. I'll still come here after school tomorrow as I did today." Bai Ye said. He was sweating profusely and didn't bother to take a shower in the bathroom in the gym. Anyway, his body would continue to sweat after training, so he might as well wash it then, so he just put on his clothes and turned around to go home. Watching Bai Ye leave the gym, Smith looked away, already looking forward to Bai Ye's arrival tomorrow. He was looking forward to whether there would be another surprise like today when he came over tomorrow, and whether his physical fitness would improve to another level after a night of exercise. At this moment, Smith felt mixed in his heart. After all, as Bai Ye's fitness coach, watching Bai Ye's figure getting stronger day by day, he had begun to feel that his client was not just a thing in the pool, but would one day soar into the sky and ring the sky. But whether this soaring into the sky and shaking the sky is going to a good place or a bad place, we can't say for sure. After all, with the current level of public opinion's hostility towards mutants, and my client's personality is not easy to get along with, I feel that in the end he will probably join the Brotherhood of Mutants, a terrorist organization formed by mutants, of course. Smith didn't want this kind of development. He also planned to be so self-conscious that he would take him away when Bai Ye got up. He even started writing a diary these days. In this way, no matter what happens to Bai Ye in the future, he can rely on his diary to publish books and make money. If Bai Ye joins the Brotherhood in the future, he will write a book, My Mutant Client, to analyze Bai Ye's heart in detail and how the other party turned bad, and if Bai Ye joins the official organization, he can also change the content to My Mutant Brothers and brag about Bai Ye's rainbow farts in the book, no matter what Bai Ye's future direction is. He is Qin Shi Huang looking in the mirror, a win-win situation. Not mentioning Smith's reverie, Bai Ye prepared to start exercising when he returned home calmly. He planned to raise his physique to 1.5 tonight and break through his physical limits. According to the description on the description column, any long-term injury can be cured as long as it reaches 1.5. I am afraid that after reaching 1.5, the healing ability will make a qualitative leap. Taking off his shirt and hanging it aside at any time, Bai Ye raised the wardrobe with both hands and was just about to exercise when the cell phone next to him suddenly rang. Putting down the wardrobe in doubt, Bai Ye walked to the table and saw the unfamiliar phone number displayed on the phone. With some speculation, Bai Ye pressed the call button. "Ah, Bai, have you been short of money recently? I'm going to do another big job here. If it's completed, I will give you 10% of the profit." A hoarse and hearty voice came from the other end of the phone. Listening to the voice on the phone, Bai Ye was silent for a while, and then said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Uncle Li, I've said before that I won't do the underworld anymore." The person on the phone paused for a moment, seeming to be thinking about something, and then continued to ask again, "Ah, Bai, are you sure you really want to stop doing this? You were born to eat this bowl of rice. After you leave, those young men will not a successful person. I still think about you taking over for me in the future." Hearing what was said on the other end of the phone, Bai Ye still insisted, "Uncle Li, I'm really sorry. I've said it before. Now I just want to study hard. You really don't want to think about it again? Reading that crap book is not as comfortable as us being in the underworld. A casual job will do more than your year of work." The tone on the other end of the phone became extremely regretful. "After your gambler parents died, if your uncle hadn't taken you in, you would have been sold to a nightclub and become a duck. But with your figure, even being a duck is better than studying. I've thought about it very clearly, Uncle Li. I'll hang up first, I still have something to worry about." Bai Ye said and hung up the phone expressionlessly, then sneered. He knew very well that his parents were doing well in New York, but the reason why they became obsessed with gambling and borrowing money at usury was not because of Uncle Li, a fellow countryman from Chinatown, and if I hadn't been a little clever, the result would have been exactly what Uncle Li said. At a young age, with no one to rely on, no assets, and only being handsome, I would have definitely been sold as a duck. It's just that the person who sold him and counted the money behind his back was also Uncle Li on the other end of the phone. Over the years, I helped him do dirty work and gradually paid off the original loan owed by his parents, and then he got out of it. As for why he wanted to leave, although he had not recovered the memory of his previous life, he could still see it clearly. In a place where mutants are everywhere, if you continue to hang out in the underworld, if you mess with some ruthless people, your whole family will be hacked to death in a matter of minutes. After hanging up the phone, Bai Ye did not start exercising immediately, but began to think about how to wash away the money from the previous robbers. Previously, he planned to let them launder the money directly through Uncle Li, so that Bai Ye could get the money, and Uncle Li could also take about 10% commission from it. But what Bai Ye didn't expect was that Uncle Li would call first and ask him to get involved in the underworld again. After refusing, he definitely couldn't ask the other party to launder money. This was not a matter of embarrassment, but of doubting the other person's integrity, fearing that Uncle Li would wash away all the proceeds from his labor, and that he would either suffer the loss or continue working under him for money. Bai Ye sighed slightly. Since this method didn't work, he could only think of another method. Now that funds were tight, he had to digest all the money as soon as possible. With new questions, Bai Ye picked up the cabinet again and started exercising. Improving himself was more reliable than any plan, so he gave up practicing the Zhutian magic skill tonight. As long as the physical fitness reaches 1.5 before tomorrow, the training time saved by the increased qualifications brought about by the physical improvement should be able to easily make up for the delayed training tonight. Chapter 17 Undercurrent. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. At night in New York, the lights are brightly lit. In a hospital ward in the city center, a handsome man wearing sunglasses and bandages on his right hand and left leg was lying on the bed at the moment. The man was none other than Daredevil Matthew, whose hands and feet were broken off by Bai Ye with a rifle last night. At this moment, he was holding a charcoal pen with his intact left hand and waving it at the notebook in front of him. Although it is relatively unbelievable for a blind person to draw, for Matthew, whose 5 senses are beyond ordinary people, he can generate the appearance of objects in his brain just from the reverberation of sound, which is even better than that of normal people in daily life. Flexible, with the rustle of charcoal sliding on the paper in front of him, until the last stroke was made, the image of a man who looked about 18 years old and was as handsome as a celestial being appeared on the paper. After Matthew finished the painting, he put down the charcoal and thought about last night's scene. He was still extremely puzzled. Who is this guy? Why does he know my identity and weaknesses so well? Thinking of what Bai Ye said last night, that if he dared to continue to inquire about his identity, he would reveal his true identity to Kingpin, Matthew's heart tightened. This feeling that the life and death of himself and his friends around him was in the hands of others was really overwhelming. Too bad, just when Matthew was hesitant to continue tracking Bai Ye's whereabouts, his ears heard the movement outside the ward. From the sound, he knew that it was Amy, his friend from the office, who was visiting him with a flower basket. With a click, the door lock was pressed, and Amy walked in quickly and asked with concern, "I heard that you got involved in the gang fight last night and was affected. How are you injured?" "Fortunately, the doctor said that I am in good health and will recover quickly, but I should not be able to work within a month," Matthew said with a smile on his face. Amy breathed a sigh of relief. "It's okay, it's nothing serious. The security situation is getting worse and worse recently. We are almost overwhelmed, but we will wait for you to help us after you recover." As he spoke, he sharply noticed the paper covered on the table next to the hospital bed. "Hey, what is that?" Amy picked it up and looked at the sketch on the paper. Her eyes lit up and she said, "Who drew this sketch next to your bed? This young man's drawing is so beautiful. Is there a real person?" As she spoke, Amy's face looked a little strange. Who on earth would give a portrait to a blind man? This behavior is a bit too abstract. Oh, this was drawn by a friend of mine. As for the person above, he was actually a student he saw on the street. Because he was deeply impressed, he drew it on the spot after he got home. Matthew explained with a smile. "Don't you recognize it? It's such a pity. I still want to see the real person, but this must be beautified. I have never seen anyone so good-looking," Amy said with regret. "I will tell my friends that the next time I see him, I will leave my contact information and introduce him to you if I have the opportunity," Matthew said, and then thought of something and made an insinuation. "I heard the family members in the next bed talking about it recently. Wasn't another bank robbed?" "Yes, this matter is quite big. We are all discussing it in our office. Last night, a gang went to rob the vault of Tylee Bank. They had obviously blown the vault open, but in the end, another super criminal appeared to steal it. He drove away the car along with the things they robbed. When the police came, they only caught the gang. They were all beaten through the ankles and couldn't run away. As for the super criminal, after a whole night of manhunt, they only found his abandoned car. Because of this incident, it was all over the newspaper headlines this morning, and the police have almost lost face." Speaking of this, Amy suddenly raised a finger and said, "Hey, by the way, I heard that the police station will hold a briefing session tomorrow morning." "External briefing?" Matthew asked curiously, and at the same time he also knew who the guy who lost the cash was. Amy nodded and explained, "Yes, after all, there has been no bank robbery in New York for a long time. Now that there is a lot of public opinion outside, we must hold a briefing to appease the hearts of New Yorkers. Is that so? It seems that the New York police are completely serious this time. Matthew nodded, and after chatting with Amy for a while, seeing that it was too late, he made an appointment to see him tomorrow morning, at the same time, at the home of the New York Police Commissioner. George's hair turned gray as he watched the negative comments about the police department on the internet. As an ordinary person, in New York City, an international metropolis with mixed crowds of people, it was only through his hard work over the years that he was promoted to the title of director, but anyone with a discerning eye knows that the police can only face ordinary criminals. It is not easy to survive when facing extraordinary beings such as superpowers, mutants, and vampires. He has also asked his superiors countless times if there are any super vigilantes to send down. Otherwise, when they encounter a big problem, they policemen can only pray for those super vigilantes to solve it, which is too passive, but such requests are always prevaricated, saying that the military's research project based on the super soldier serum was forced to stop not long ago because an experimental subject escaped from the base during the experiment, causing the experiment to be temporarily shelved. The military is currently pursuing it with all its strength. We can only wait a little longer. But no matter what, relying on caution and a clear positioning of self-strength, they have made patchwork over the years. Compared with other big cities, the annual police sacrifice rate in New York City is only 5%, which is already very high. It's not easy anymore. Thinking of the press conference to be held tomorrow morning, he rehearsed his speech before going to bed, weakly declined his wife's invitation, and fell into sleep exhausted both physically and mentally. We should wash out the money as soon as possible. In the bedroom, Bai Ye thought while exercising, money has become increasingly tight recently, and the funds in hand should be legalized as soon as possible. Just as Bai Ye was thinking this, several men with fierce looks and big tendons were sitting together in a certain warehouse. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, the police will start a press conference. Many police will be there at that time. It is definitely the time when the police force is the most empty. At that time, we only need to go in the opposite direction and complete the operation fully armed. A man with a scar face said. "Brother, which bank should we rob?" A man asked. "Of course it's Lanchel Bank. I've done thorough research. This bank's cash reserves are definitely the most abundant in New York City, but the guards are not very strict." Scarface said, but at this time, they ignored an important question: why is this bank with a lot of money so poorly guarded? Chapter 18 Bank Meets Bank Again. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. In the early morning, the sun shines in through the window and hits the head of the bed. As the alarm rang, Bai Ye's slightly closed eyes suddenly opened, and he stretched out his right hand to turn off the ringer. After several hours of hard work last night, his physical attributes were successfully increased to 1.5, which also means that all his three-dimensional attributes have exceeded the limits of the human body. The basic values on the white knight panel are now as follows: name, Bai Ye, lifespan, 18/200. Strength, 1.5 plus 0.2. Constitution, 1.5 plus, Spirit, 1.5 plus, Charisma, 1.4 plus, attribute points to be used, 0.3. After his constitution reached 1.5, his lifespan was successfully extended to more than 200 years. With a few more years, he could live another American history. As for other characteristics of the physique, Bai Ye discovered that as his exercise ended, the original description of the long-term damage caused by the number of exercises completely disappeared in the description column, leaving only the number of times of exercise that could improve physical fitness by 0.1. After getting up and moving his body lightly, and then simply washing up, Bai Ye opened the refrigerator, took out the food and chewed it slowly. Today he still needs to go out to solve the problem of the black money. As for the visit to the Osborne group arranged by the school, just skip class, study, learn shit. As his physical fitness got better and better, Bai Ye also began to realize that he began to care less about things other than strength, or that he was better able to prioritize things. In the face of pure violence, everything else all have to give in. Hey! Bai Ye suddenly let out a sigh while eating, and touched his belly strangely, feeling a feeling of fullness coming from his belly. "Why has your appetite decreased today?" Bai Ye looked puzzled as he looked at the unfinished food in his hands. In recent days, due to the overload of physical exercise every day and the improvement of his physical fitness, his appetite has become bigger and bigger every day. He feels hungry from time to time, and he is unwilling to wrong himself, so his daily food expenses are also huge, but at this moment, he began to feel that his appetite was only half of what it was yesterday morning. Is it because of improved physical fitness? Does the enhanced stomach use food more efficiently? Bai Ye could only guess like this. Bai Ye ate the half-bitten food in front of him, put the remaining food in the refrigerator and prepared to go out. On the other side, at 9 o'clock in the morning, students from Zhutian High School got on the school bus one by one before the designated time. "Where's Bai Ye? Bai Ye didn't come again." Teacher James looked at the students in the car. Sure enough, he didn't see the conspicuous figure in the crowd, and looked at Peter in the car. Peter Parker shook his head helplessly, saying that he didn't know either. James repeated it again. After confirming that he really hadn't come, he was full of helplessness for this self-indulgent student and said to the students in the car, "Everyone, sit down and get ready to go to Osborne Company." After saying that, after signaling to the driver, the school bus started slowly and headed towards its destination. Just as the bus was driving towards Osborne, Bai Ye had already arrived at the pile of rocks where the accounts had been hidden, and easily moved the half-ton stone from the cave, revealing the gold and silver bills inside. Opening the suitcase he brought, Bai Ye had enough time to pick through these things. In the end, after taking only part of the cash and gold, he moved the stones back to their original positions. Putting the cash into the suitcase, Bai Ye picked up the gold and held it in his hands, then used both hands hard. Under the huge force, several gold bars that were originally marked by the bank gradually deformed under Bai Ye's kneading, and finally formed a large irregular circle. After putting the golden ball into a suitcase full of cash, Bai Ye picked it up and walked towards the Rancho Bank in New York. The reason why I chose this bank is because anyone who has been involved in the black and white circles of New York for a long time knows that this bank is run by the mutant organization Brotherhood. It can be called the Marvel version of the Continental Hotel. When you deposit money here, no one will check the source of your amount. As long as you deposit the money in this bank and pay the 15% handling fee, it won't take long before they will notify you of winning the lottery or gambling. Such reasonable method allows you to regain the remaining 85% of the amount. As for the black money deposited in the bank, of course it disappears directly into the account after a period of time. For a long time, the government has turned a blind eye to this bank because it was wary of the strength of the Brotherhood of Mutants, a terrorist organization. As long as it didn't go too far, there would be no trouble. Bai Ye walked into the bank with her suitcase as usual. Seeing that there were customers handling business at the 3 windows in front of her, she silently found a window with the fewest people and waited. A few minutes later, it was finally Bai Ye's turn. He walked up with his suitcase, put it on the table and whispered to the customer service, "Open an anonymous account for cleaning." As he said that, the customer service staff in front of him was first attracted by Bai Ye's appearance, and then immediately showed a knowing smile on his face and said, "Please leave any bank card number, and the remaining money will be sent to you after 1 to 3 working days. On that card." Bai Ye nodded and was about to take out his bank card from his pocket, but his sensitive hearing heard a large number of people rushing in outside, and then, "Robbing the bank, everyone get down immediately and don't move, otherwise the gun in my hand may go off." An arrogant voice resounded through the hall. Different from the fright of others, Bai Ye was completely confused. Doesn't this guy know where this is? What kind of strength, Scion or Superman, dare to rob this place? Also, this is the second time he has robbed a bank in New York, right? Bai Ye, who was confused, looked at the customer service in front of him and asked, "Is this your bank's drill?" Looking at the frightened face of the customer service lady in front of him, Bai Ye knew that he might have encountered a fool. "What are you doing standing still? Hurry up and lie down with your hands on your head. What is in this box? Open it quickly." The submachine gun in the hands of the robber behind him was pressed against Bai Ye's back, and his tone was extremely arrogant. After taking a look at the surveillance camera surrounding the bank, it was obvious that the entire process of his entry had been filmed. Bai Ye could only put down his preparations to directly kill these people, put his head in his hands and obediently stepped aside, allowing the robbers to open their luggage. Seeing a box of cash and a gold ball bigger than an egg, the robber's eyes almost popped out of his head, and he immediately shouted, "Brother, come and take a look, this kid is quite rich." Bai Ye rolled his eyes, not feeling any fear of being hijacked, and walked out of the customer service platform obediently, then stayed with the others to minimize his sense of presence. Chapter 19, Professional Team. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. In the morning, there was chaos inside the bank in New York. Looking at these armed robbers, panic almost appeared on everyone's face. Of course, not everyone here was afraid. Bai Ye observed the expressions of everyone in the bank. In addition to himself, there was another man at the scene who was not afraid in the face of danger. He subconsciously touched his waist with his right hand. He was probably a member of the underworld who came to do things like himself. Hurry up and grab the money, be quick and agile. Bai Ye held his head in his hands and huddled with a group of hostages, praying in his heart. He was not worried at all about the loss after his money was robbed. After all, this was not robbing his own money, it was just a slap in the mutant's face. If this group of people really gets away with it, this bank affiliated with the Brotherhood will really have no prestige at all. To go out and do long-term business, you rely on credibility. Even terrorists must be honest. If they say they will kill someone, the whole family will not miss one. Bai Ye was sure that after this group of robbers walked out of the bank door, the mutants who felt offended would be able to find this group of people that night, and after crushing their ashes, they would of course return all the money they had robbed. So at this moment, he hoped that these stupid young people would quickly grab all the money and get out, so that the matter could be resolved more smoothly. Hurry up, take out all the cash receipts in the bank now, and cooperate obediently. Don't press the alarm, otherwise you will be beaten to death. The robber threatened the staff at the counter with a submachine gun in his hand. While the robber was speaking, gunfire erupted in the bank the next moment, sparking a scream. The security guard who wanted to fight back in the dark was shot several times and fell to the ground. The robber who fired the gun also cried out while covering his bleeding waist. Scott. Seeing that his companion was shot, the robber who had pointed the gun at the customer service immediately shouted worriedly, and then surrounded him, not even taking the money, but nervously caring about his companion at this moment. Injury. Eris, ask customer service to open the vault inside first. We don't have much time. The robber guarding the hostages urged. I won't steal the money anymore. Let's go. I'll take you to the hospital now. The robber Eris didn't listen at all, but supported Scott and said. Leave me alone, go and grab the money. My injury is not fatal, the money is more important. The robber clutched his wound in pain and urged. White Knight, Bai Ye, who was watching the whole process, was confused. How could he meet such a weirdo? Brother, this is robbing a bank. Do you think this is a Qionyao drama? Are you still trying to steal money? After some dithering, these people finally started to rob the bank step by step. On one side, they held the bank manager hostage and opened the vault, while on the other side they looted the cash at the counter, but seeing the other party's reckless actions, Bai Ye's blood pressure rose. The robber in front of the counter was so unprepared that he took away all the cash stored inside at once. You must know that in order to call the police immediately after a robbery, some banks will set up trigger alarms under the cash at the counter, so experienced gangs usually put a few pieces of paper when withdrawing money. Now, it goes without saying that the police department has received news from these idiots and is ready to dispatch the police. Here, several robbers still knew nothing about the situation. Under the leadership of the manager, they opened the vault, and their eyes shone when they looked at the cash, gold, bills, and piles of valuables inside. As everyone knows, the valuables in the vault are all goods stored by various gangs. Now looting the vault is equivalent to directly offending half of the New York gangsters. The last person who dared to do this can't even find a decent organ. Sure enough, just as these people were rushing around for money, after a series of mental operations by these people, in less than 3 minutes, before they could fill the sacks with money, a rapid siren sounded outside the bank. 7 or 8 police cars surrounded the place on the spot. Boss, we are surrounded by police. A robber said in a panic. Damn it, didn't I say that the police were holding a press conference today? How could it come so fast? The robber leader said angrily. Fuck. Bai Ye, who was hiding in the crowd, rolled his eyes. He said that this was the reason why these people chose this time to attack. Although I have been addicted to fitness during this period and have no idea about this press conference, I can think about it with my head. Could it be that if the boss holds a press conference, his employees will have a holiday? The entire New York City covers more than 1,000 square kilometers, has a total of 77 police stations, and more than 30,000 official police officers. What on earth are these people thinking in their brains, and don't they do any research? This is no longer an amateur team. In addition to being skilled in marksmanship and strong in body, Bai Ye suspects that their brains have been occupied by muscles. At this moment, Bai Ye had completely resigned himself to his fate and just squatted aside watching the 6 or 7 robbers perform monkey tricks. Anyway, with his current physical condition, if he didn't want to be exposed, he wouldn't be afraid of killing these people in a matter of minutes. People inside, come out. You are surrounded. Hurry up, put down your weapons and surrender. The police outside shouted inside with a loudspeaker, and their repeated urgings made the faces of the robbers gloomy. Brother, what should I do? A robber's face looked extremely pale behind his mask. Talk to them and ask them to prepare a van for us, and then we leave here with the hostages. The robber leader said, looking at the customer squatting in the corner, and fell in love with Bai Ye at a glance. You, come here. The leader pointed at Bai Ye with a submachine gun. Me? Bai Ye was stunned for a moment, not expecting anything to happen to him, but he still got up and walked out obediently. Yes, you are here to be a hostage. When you stand at the door and make terms with them later, we will point the gun at you from behind and shoot you if you dare to run around. The leader affirmed, looking at Bai Ye's face. Oh. Bai Ye nodded, wasn't he just being a hostage? At the same time, reporters from various newspapers gathered on a building in Times Square in New York. Each of these people looked at Director George on the stage with long guns and short cannon equipment, and asked one after another very guiding questions, because I had already understood the urinary nature of these media, and had memorized the draft last night, I responded smoothly. But the next moment, the deputy director ran up in a panic from the side and whispered quickly into George's ear. A few words. What, the Rancho Bank in New York was also robbed? George confirmed, a little nervous. As soon as the words fell, the eyes of the reporters in the audience suddenly lit up. Click. 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 Countless reporters pressed the shutter on their cameras, and with the dazzling light, the panicked images of the chief and deputy directors on the stage were immediately recorded. Chapter 20 Become Famous. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. In New York, outside the Rancher Bank, a hurried police car parked outside the cordon. George got out of the car, and the sun shone on his face as black as the bottom of a pot. It seemed that as long as he shook his head gently, cinders would fall off his face. Who knows? I was planning to hold a press conference to explain the bank robbery the day before yesterday, but another robbery occurred during the meeting. This was a slap in the face too quickly. At this moment, outside the cordon, the police station was surrounded by a large number of media and onlookers. There were even reporters driving a news helicopter aimed at the bank to broadcast the entire process live. How is the situation inside now? Have the negotiators arrived? George asked, trying his best to ignore the gazes of reporters behind him. The police officer in charge of recording said, "Report to the chief, there are 7 robbers. Some people have resisted and died inside. There are now more than 20 hostages inside, and they may be in danger of death at any time. As for the negotiator, it will take a while to arrive." Hearing that there had been casualties, George's expression became more serious. We must get in touch with the inside as soon as possible. Do we need to call the dedicated hotline in the bank? They have already called us. They said they would contact us again and asked us to wait, the police officer said. As soon as the voice fell, the phone rang immediately. A police officer next to the phone immediately reported, "Chief, there is a call coming from inside. Do you want to answer it immediately? I'll pick it up. George sighed. I picked up the phone and heard a calm male voice coming from inside. Hello, police. Let's talk to someone with a higher level who can make the decision. George said without hesitation, I am New York Director George. The entire bank is surrounded by us now. Please put down your weapons immediately. As long as there is a surrender, we can discuss the sentencing. I'm a hostage, there's no use telling me this. Oh. Next, I will open the bank door as a transfer for the dialogue between the two parties. Now there are several guns pointed at my back. If I make any extraordinary move, I will be shot to death immediately, so please do not take drastic action. In the bank, Bai Ye looked at the black muzzle of the gun in front of him, his expression extremely calm, but in fact, the muscles in his body were tense to the extreme, and he might explode into rebellion at any time. After all, his current physique is not strong enough to withstand bullets, but it doesn't matter. As long as he doesn't die on the spot, he can use attribute points to return to his best condition. Now, go out and describe our requirements to them. If you mess around, I'll beat you to death. The robber leader said viciously. Bai Ye nodded lightly, feeling a little impatient in his heart. He had the urge to kill these people, but now that the commotion was so loud, it was even harder to do so. Under the guns of these people, Bai Ye came to the door with a phone in his hand, slowly pushed the door open and walked out. He saw that the police, reporters and onlookers were watching everywhere. Outside the bank, the reporters saw someone coming out, and they all looked forward to seeing who was the first person to walk out of the bank. As a result, a handsome Chinese-American boy walked out, with a face pressure of 1.4, which made everyone present subconsciously take a breath. At this moment, George was still on the phone with Bai Ye, but he didn't expect that such a beautiful young man would come out, but as a father, he subconsciously paid attention to some small things. He frowned slightly and said to the phone, You are still a student. Isn't today Wednesday? Well, I skipped class. Bai Ye said matter-of-factly, causing George to choke. Stop talking nonsense. Isn't the key point now to rescue us? Bai Ye asked back, Their request is for you to prepare a van immediately, and then let them leave with the cash without tracking. We need a little time to think and prepare. George said. Of course there is no problem, but if you can't do it within an hour, they will kill a hostage every 5 minutes. Well, let's start with me. Bai Ye calmly described the conversation between the robbers just now. After I've finished speaking, is there anything you need me to tell them? If not, I'll leave. Bai Ye asked. Please tell them that we will try our best to meet their requirements, but the time needs to be more generous. At the same time, it is best to communicate face to face, which will facilitate communication. George said helplessly. Okay, I will bring you what you say, but whether you listen or not is none of my business. Bai Ye's free and easy look also made George wonder why this guy was so calm. Aren't you afraid of being involved in a robbery? There's nothing to be afraid of. Once you meet their requirements, I will be safe. Bai Ye said, turning around and walking into the bank. Inside Osborne Company, under the leadership of Teacher James, the staff are visiting this world-leading technology company. Just as James was touring the company with the guide, the cell phone in his pocket suddenly rang, and the caller turned out to be the principal of their school. Hey, principal, what's the matter? I'm accompanying the students to visit Osborne Company. James picked up the phone and said. Is Bai Ye with you? He's the Chinese student in your class. On the other end of the phone, the principal asked seriously. Well, he skipped class today, why did he suddenly ask about him? James asked curiously. He was kidnapped at the bank and has now made headlines on major news pages across the United States. The principal looked at the news that appeared on the homepages of major news websites. What? James shouted out loud, and pretended to be calm when facing the whole class who were looking over. You guys will visit with the staff first, the teacher has something to deal with. Peter Parker, like the other students, watched with confusion as James hurried away as if his home was on fire. Above his head, a red and blue spider was hanging down from above with its silk thread, gently attaching itself to the back of his neck, and then bit it in one bite. Hiss. Peter Parker subconsciously slapped his neck, and then looked at his palm. A smashed spider corpse was lying quietly on his hand. Here, James borrowed a computer from Osborne Company, opened the news page, and saw that a young man wearing a black and white striped shirt was fronting the headlines of major American mainstream media. That face, isn't it his own student? James no longer knew how to describe his mood at this moment. He continued to browse and found that there were not only photos, but also all the videos after Bai Ye appeared. There were even news helicopters circling the bank.